Everybody tell Hannah hello.
Hello. I'm sorry you're sick. Okay. So Hannah, the consensus was that the test was a little easier. I hope that you found it to be a little easier too. Okay, so we're starting on module 13. It's phylum chordata. This is our module that we have 3 weeks to do. So it's going to be, that's why I said if you got a little bit behind on this one's a good one to get behind on because we have a little more time with it. And so today we're going to cover a good bit. We're going to go all the way up and then we're going to stop at amphibians. So we're actually going to go over more than what you've actually done or read. We're going to go further because next week we'll be covering amphibians and doing the frog dissection. And actually there's not a lot of class lecture. The amphibian lecture is very short. And so most of that class time will be doing the frog. And then the next week is the week that I'm going to be out of town. And so it's just kind of a study week. So we're not going to have class that week. And then you will hopefully by Thursday or Friday of that week that I'm gone, you'll take your test. That should be plenty of time. So in module 13, there are 3 Quizlets. The one on amphibians is a little shorter. The other 2 are pretty long. The Quizlets, everything that's on the test is in the Quizlet. The Quizlets are, I would say that this is probably a Quizlet heavy test and module. So make sure you're kind of studying the Quizlets all along. Okay. How did everybody, and also I want to apologize. I had that video of the lab with the fish dissection. So I think, was that on the work maybe for yesterday? Yeah. That shouldn't have been on the work for yesterday. It should have been in a few more days. Because after you read that section, and the reason I messed that,
I was like, are we doing
a
dissection?
I'm sorry. The reason that was there is that last year we did do the fish dissection. It was very unsuccessful. It's very hard to cut through. It was very hard to see anything. I felt like it was very unsuccessful. So I had already decided that we weren't doing the fish dissection. It was just kind of a waste. And so I think last time I had the fish dissection on that date so that they watched it before class, but I didn't realize when I was writing all that out that you wouldn't even have read that part. So it's good to watch. If you haven't watched it, do watch it after you've read all the stuff about the fish. But it was a little early. You'll see this next week. There's some really good videos. There's one about sharks that's really good. And I will tell you, when you get to the reading in your book about sharks, some of the information is a little bit outdated. And so when you watch the video about it, you'll realize that it contradicts some of the information in the book, okay? And so the video is correct, other than the person that did the video is a microevolutionist, and he talks about evolution. And so I kind of gave you a little warning on your homework, that I don't necessarily agree with him about everything because he talks about the evolution of sharks, but it's still a really good video and has a lot of good information, and it was worth keeping despite that, as long as you can use a filter. Hey Nancy.
I have not read every single word.
Oh, that's okay. I've been there. I'm glad you're here. So yes, so make sure you watch the video about the sharks and the rays next week. They're good ones. And Nancy, we're frog dissection next week.
Oh, next week.
Next week.
This week. Okay.
Yeah, next week, frog dissection. Next week we'll really only probably lecture for about 20 minutes, and then the rest of the time will be the frog dissection. And then the following week is that kind of extra week we have. So that might be also a good week for you to work, so to help kind of give you some time with your work. Okay, and Hannah is sick today.
Okay.
All right, so let's get started. Phylum chordata. Why is it called phylum chordata?
Because there's like a cord.
There's a cord. There is a cord, and what does that cord do?
It provides support as the not a cord.
It provides support, and also in some organisms, in the ones from vertebrata, it also is protecting something. Does anybody know what's inside?
The nerve cord.
The nerve cord. The nerve cord. Okay. All right. So tell me, what is a notochord like, and who has one?
It's like a nerve cord that doesn't stay forever. It's like at the beginning of their life. Right?
Well, it doesn't stay forever in most.
Most.
Yes, in most.
Sorry.
Mhm.
I can't remember the name of what the example is. I remember the picture.
Okay. Okay.
Let me find the name. real
So,
quick.
I think you're looking for page, 394, 395.
Yeah, that's the exact picture in my head.
So under phylum
C-square.
C-square. So under phylum chordata, we have 3 subphylums. Okay? Urochordata, cephalochordata, and vertebrata. Which one are we? Vertebrata. Okay? And do organisms in vertebrata have a notochord?
No.
Yes.
Do they ever have a
Spinal
notochord?
cord, no.
Do they ever have a notochord?
Yes.
Is it when they're developing?
Yes. So all the organisms in vertebrata at some point before birth, okay, have a notochord, but it becomes vertebrae. It becomes what we know as our backbone. Okay. Urochordata is what the C-squirt is, and those have a notochord during their larva stage that is going to disappear in the adult stage. And so that diagram on page 394 goes through the life cycle of the sea squirt. And when it's a larva, you see that notochord, and it's the dorsal nerve cord is running along it. And then its body changes and the nerve cord disappears, and it actually develops a kind of a hard shell on the outside that kind of gives it support and its structure when it becomes a C-squirt, and it does not no longer has a notochord. Okay. Then the subphylum Cephalochordata has a notochord its entire life. Okay, so with Urochordata, they're going to have a notochord at some point. It's going to disappear, and then they're not going to have a backbone. Okay, they're not going to have a notochord or vertebrates. The Cephalochordata is going to have a notochord its entire life, and the vertebrata are going to have it at some point in the life cycle before it's born or before it's hatched, and then it's going to have a more traditional, what we think of as a backbone. Everybody got me? Okay, so who wants to tell me a little bit about what vertebrae are and kind of describe that? Do we have more than one vertebrae?
Yes.
Yes.
It's like segments of bone.
Segments, that's the word, yes.
And then sort of backbone, so it'd be segments of bone running down the back.
Mhm.
It just provides support. Obviously it's bone, so it's pretty hard substance.
It's a hard substance, it's bone, and does anybody know what's kind of in between each of those segments?
Oh, I know.
Anybody remember?
I took anatomy last year. Yeah. Oh my gosh. And they start to like shrink when you get older. That's why you shrink.
Cartilage?
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Yes, so that, yes. And why do you think, like if we think about the form follows function statement that we talked about last week, why do you think that God designed our backbone of the vertebrae with vertebrae rather than just like a bone with the nerves going through it.
So we can move.
So we can move and bend, exactly. Okay, all right. The cephalocordata, the lancet. Anybody want to tell me a little bit about how that one feeds? You can look at that one on page 395.
The lancelet takes in food by filtering out the phytoplankton and zooplankton in the water.
Okay,
I
so
totally just read
yes,
that.
that's good, that's fine. So the lancet and the sea squirt, okay, they're both filter feeders. Okay, so filter feeders are basically circulating water through their mouth, and they have some kind of system that's like a filter that catches the tiny little plankton and particles to eat as food. So also in this module today, we're going to talk about, these are obviously smaller filter feeders, but there are animals that are huge that are filter feeders. Okay. Can anybody think of a really large one that's a filter feeder? Whale sharks. Okay, so that's a huge filter feeder, and you think, how can it be that big and get enough calories from all those little plankton? And it's just constantly filtering and taking in food. So yes, so the lancet has these oral cirri, and those also have little cilia on those cells, and so they're constantly feeding the water and filtering the water through. And there are slits in the pharynx that gets trapped in there, and the food goes straight to the gut, and it's just constantly being filtered. All right, and then the waste is going to go out the anus. All right. Okay, so we're going to move on to vertebrata and talk a little bit about bone and skeletons. And so what is an endoskeleton? And how is that different than the opposite?
Can you repeat the question?
What is an endoskeleton? So we talked about with the arthropods they had. Who remembers what the arthropods had?
They had an
Exoskeleton. Okay, so endoskeleton is the opposite. So what does that mean, Ruby?
That means instead of it being like a shell on the outside, it's on the inside of the animal.
Yes, so it's going to provide structure and support. So our skeleton is on the inside. It's an endoskeleton. And our bone, if you can look at page 397, it's the diagram of our bone. And the bones, what is on the kind of the outside of our bone that surrounds the outside of our bone?
The blood vessels?
It's in a layer. It's a membrane. I'm looking for a word. It starts with a P.
Periosteum.
Periosteum.
Sorry.
Okay, that's good. So periosteum is a membrane that contains the blood vessels that supply oxygen and nutrients to the bone. And in that periosteum, there are also nerves, okay? And so that's why when you break a bone, that's where the pain is coming from, okay? Is from those nerves in the periosteum.
Has anybody broken the bone before?
I have. I broke it at summer camp, and guess what? I went to the nurse there, and she said that it was just bruised, so I walked on it all week. And people made me like stretch it out and like bring it behind my back and stuff. And so I walked on a broken leg all week without crutches.
Were you dying?
Yes, and people thought I was over exaggerating, so I like cried all day. People were like, oh, and then afterwards everyone was like, oops, we thought she was over exaggerating.
And they were able to set it okay correctly like a week later?
Yeah, it was like 2 days after I came home. My mom was like, after a while, I think my body just got used to the pain, so it didn't hurt as bad. But
You must have a high pain threshold.
I think I do.
Yeah, yeah.
I think I do.
That's, huh.
And they even have me walking up like hills and stuff. So at camp, like you're always like walking places.
Right,
So
yeah.
it's walking on it all.
Okay, so we got 3 different kinds of bone cells. And so all the bone cells are gonna start with osteo. That means bones. And so you hear about older people having the disease osteoporosis. That's holes in your bones. A pore is like a hole, okay? So that's just the osteoporosis stands for having these kind of small pores or holes throughout your bones. All right, so we've got osteoblasts. They make new bone, okay? So they're promoting growth. So kids are gonna have more osteoblast going because their bones are growing, okay? Osteocytes, we know site means what? Cells. So osteocyte is just a name for mature bone cells. And then osteoclast, these are bone cells that cause a bone to actually break down. And you think, why would bones break down? Bones are constantly rebuilding and breaking down, even in normal, healthy people. But as you get older, they're breaking down more and you're building up less, okay? And when you're younger, you're building up more and breaking down less. But, and sometimes the bones are broken down because the body might need a certain mineral and you're not taking it in nutritionally. And so the body will break down bone. And I will tell y'all my story about the only time I've broken a bone was, and I really think that it was somewhat, the issue was my nutritional state. But so I was like 22 and I was a senior in college and I had an eating disorder. And so really probably for a year I had not eaten properly at all. And I'm sure that I was probably deficient in a lot of nutrients. And so I was just walking down my driveway and I had had Tevas on. You guys probably don't know what those are. They're like Chacos or like okay. But Tevas were like the end thing. And I tripped over my Teva and I just like kind of barely fell and it was nothing. And I think a normal person, they would have been fine, but I actually broke a bone in my foot. And I really think that it was because my bones were very fragile because I was not in a good nutritional state. You know, if an older person did that, you would expect that they would break a bone. And that's why their bones break so easily, because a lot of times they're gonna have porous bones. But you wouldn't expect that in a 22-year-old. All right, okay, so on this diagram, we've got the different kinds of bone tissue. You've got more compact bone tissue where you can see that the cells are butted up against each other, and then you've got the spongy tissue, which is the cells are a little bit looser. And in the middle, what do you have? Bone marrow, okay, and that is what happens there. What gets made in the bone marrow? Blood cells. Okay. And people actually eat bone marrow. It's kind of like a delicacy, especially over in England.
Not human ones.
Not human. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that, Nancy.
Not human, right?
Yes, not human bone.
I mean, you're English.
That's right. That's right. I think it's like sheep and lamb and that kind of, those kind of animals. All right.
No, not humans, just baby
Not humans.
animals.
Okay, all right, collagen and cartilage. What is the cartilage when we were talking about what's in between the vertebrae? We're talking about cartilage. What is cartilage? And what is it like and how is it different than bone?
It's more flexible, but it's also weaker.
Yes. So our nose has cartilage, and just because we have a skeleton and we have bone, we still have cartilage throughout our body. We have mostly bone, but we have some cartilage, and cartilage is used to cushion our joints. And our cartilage does start to deteriorate as we get older, which is why things like knees and shoulders and backs start to hurt. Okay.
I already have that.
All right. Okay. So let's look at the skeleton on page 398. And what is the axial skeleton, which is in the purple? What is that?
It makes up the base of the human's body, like what the core components of it. It
Mhm.
protects like organs.
So it supports the head, neck, and trunk, yes, and it definitely protects the organs. And then what comes off of the axial skeleton?
Appendicular.
Okay, appendicular skeleton, okay, so that attaches to the axial skeleton, and the limbs, like the arms and legs, attach to that. The arms attach to the pectoral girdle, and the legs attach to the pelvic girdle. Okay. All right, so now we are, this module is a little bit different because in our last module, all of our animals had open circulatory systems. And so now we're going into closed circulatory systems, which is interesting because have you noticed where the nerve cord is in these organisms that we're studying so far in this? How is it different than where the nerve cord was last time, Ruby?
It's on the dorsal side instead of the ventral side?
Yes, it's on the dorsal side instead of the ventral side because we've got closed circulatory systems. All right, so in a closed system, some things to know. You've got kind of three major groups of blood vessels. Anybody know what those three are?
Arteries,
Capillaries,
capillaries,
Veins.
veins, and what are the small ones?
Veins.
Veins.
Veins. No, the small ones. What are the smallest?
capillaries.
Capillaries, okay? So capillaries are very, very tiny. All right, and so, all right, so arteries carry blood away from the heart. And then as they travel through, the blood is going to go through capillaries. Capillaries are the tiniest vessels, and there's certain parts of your body that are going to be rich with capillaries, and those are going to be parts of the body where the cells need oxygen and nutrients. So can anybody think of an area where it's going to be rich with capillaries?
Oh, the heart?
The heart, somewhat, but not, yes.
Your hands and your feet.
Hands, feet, eyes, yes. Your digestive, your intestines, your digestive, yes. Your liver, and there's a good diagram that's going to show you that we'll get to in a minute. Okay, so if you look at the fish, which we'll just look over this on page 412, you see how you've got the red, that's the arteries, okay? And then the blood goes through these little, I call these capillary beds. So like groups of capillaries. And then the blue-purple blood is the veins, okay? And so the red blood is rich with oxygen and nutrients, okay? That's getting pumped out. And then it goes through those capillary beds. In those capillary beds, that's where diffusion happens. So the oxygen and the nutrients then diffuse into the cells where they're needed. So capillary beds are going to be places where nutrients are needed in the body. And then the blood that's had the oxygen and the nutrients removed is the purple blood, and it's going to travel back up to the heart. Okay? So gills are going to be loaded with capillaries. All right, gills, intestines. All right, okay, so what makes the blood red?
I thought that was really interesting. How it was like when the veins are sending the blood back to the heart, it dark because they don't have oxygen. But then when they are coming back from like with the arteries, then they're like really red.
Yes, so the oxygen in the, what carries the oxygen in the blood?
The red blood cell.
There's a specific one that you're supposed to know. It's a protein.
Hemoglobin.
Hemoglobin. Okay, globin always is some kind of protein. Okay, so hemoglobin carries the oxygen in the blood, and so when the hemoglobin has oxygen attached to it, and the blood is oxygen rich, it's going to be a bright red color. Okay. After the blood travels through those capillary beds and the cells absorb the oxygen by diffusion, and then it's traveling back. On the diagrams, it shows it as blue, and from our bodies, when we look at our skin, we see it as blue. But is it actually blue on the inside if we cut this open? Is it blue? No.
Because it's,
No, what is it,
it
Nancy?
has oxygen now, so it's like the night.
Well, no, but if we were in there right now, okay, it looks blue from the outside, but it's actually not blue. It's a deeper, darker red when it doesn't have the when it has less oxygen. So it's like a bright red. Yes, when it has the oxygen, but then it's like a deeper, darker red when it doesn't, but it looks blue to us.
Because the dark red blood doesn't reflect light to the tissue as well as the bright red blood does.
Is that what it says in the book? Okay, yes. So it looks blue, but it's not actually blue. So.
Okay, does what you eat change how red your blood is?
It shouldn't. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about the nervous system. And so you can look at page 400. And one thing to note in this module is that the organisms that we're studying, they're getting more complex as we go along. So, and they're also getting more similar to our bodies. And so just studying the fish and studying the frog anatomy, there's a lot of similarities that end up relating to the human body. So we kind of, as we go through the textbook, the organisms get more complex and more like our bodies. All right. Okay, so with the nervous system, we've got brains. And so before we had organisms that just had ganglia that were acting like brains, but now we are studying organisms that actually have brains. Most vertebrates have brains, and that controls their nervous system. And so the brains, so this is a typical brain and nervous system of an organism that's a vertebrate, and it's got different lobes. What lobe controls smell?
Olfactory lobe.
The olfactory lobes control smell. What are the biggest lobes? And the lobes come in pairs, so all the lobes come in pairs except one. Cerebellum does not come in pairs, okay? So the cerebrum is the largest, and what does it do?
It coordinates like the brain with like the body's movements.
Yes, and speech and language. Okay, and then what about optic lobes? What does that sound like it does?
Sight.
That sight. And then the cerebellum is the one that doesn't come in pairs, and it is going to be more involuntary movements. And the medulla oblongata is going to control your vital functions like your circulatory system, your breathing, your respiratory system. So yes, so they're all going to be in pairs. And then what about with the lobes? You have lobes on the right and lobes on the left. What do you know is true about the lobes?
They're different, like on the right.
So does the right control, when you think about the cerebrum that controls your movements, does the right control the right side of the body? It does, control the left side of the body, yes. During COVID, my mom had a stroke, and it was on her left side of the body. So a stroke is when you have a blood clot that ends up getting caught in your brain, and so it cuts off blood supply to a section of your brain and does damage to the brain. So it was on her left side, and so she could not, her face was drooping on the right, and then she could not control her right leg, and she couldn't do much with her right arm. So yes, so the opposite side. Okay, so messages from the brain travel down the nerve cord and out to the nerves. And then the nerves also are gonna pick up messages, like you touch something that's really hot, and they're gonna send that message through the nerves, up the nerve cord, and back to the brain. So then the brain then can tell the body what to do, how to respond, to jerk away from that hot thing. All right. Okay, so now reproduction. Oh, Nancy?
Why do you, like, I know this is a thing that when you get electrocuted, you can't let go. Why is that? I don't really know the
I didn't know that, Nancy. When you get electrocuted, you
If you
can't
have
let
like
go.
a higher voltage, like a high voltage, and it's like keeps on going, you can't let go.
Because you couldn't contract your muscles, I believe.
Yeah.
And well, like, because your body runs off of electricity impulse, overloading that will contract your muscles. And so you won't let go of it.
I don't know. We'll have to look that up. Yes, okay.
I feel like I've been taught it.
I have not heard that. I did not know that. But, you know, the muscles, there are, electricity does, I can see, I mean, what Eli's saying makes sense to me.
Yeah.
It makes sense to me, but because I don't know, I don't want to answer that. Okay, so reproduction in animals can be internal or external. In internal reproduction, the sperm is going to go inside the female's body, okay? That doesn't mean that the baby develops inside the female body. It just means that the sperm goes inside the female's body. External fertilization, the male fertilizes the egg outside the female's body. So when we talked about the earthworm, that's going to be external fertilization, because the fertilization happens in that cocoon, okay? All right. But most of our animals for the rest of the semester are going to be internal fertilization. All right, so with the internal fertilization, we've got 3 different methods of development, and these are all hard to say. So oviparous, anybody want to tell me what that one is?
Development that occurs in an egg hatched outside the female.
Yes, so that's going to be a bird, okay? It's going to have oviparous. All right, and then ovoviviparous. I know I didn't say that right. What happens with that one, Ruby?
That one's when the egg is it's fertilized. Can I not speak? I'm just gonna read it off the book because I know what I'm saying. I just can't say it right. Development that occurs in an egg that is hatched inside the female's body.
Yes. So this is not very common. So this is a guppy fish, but this is not a very common situation. Okay. And then the viparous, you've got development occurs inside the female's body, but it's not in an egg. And the nutrients and vital substances are getting to the developing baby through the placenta. Okay, so that's what we are. All right. Okay, I think, so this, we're still on stuff that you guys covered. What did you have to read through? You read class ag NAMPA, right?
We read until 4:04, so like the on your.
Okay. But you did the lamprey eels and the video about the lamprey eels?
Mm-hmm.
You did that, okay, good, alright.
Okay. I didn't see a video about lamprey eels.
It was like
That's a good one, you gotta
2
watch.
minutes.
Yeah, it's not that long, but you definitely need to, it was,
I don't remember seeing one because I went on. I'll go look and I'll text you.
was it on,
It was on like the week where.
was it on Wednesday?
I think I think so. I think both the videos were on like the same day.
I don't think it showed the title, I think it might have just been the,
Yeah, no.
like
Yeah,
the
one of them
link,
was
like
like
it didn't show a title, like sometimes it doesn't give you the option
It
to
doesn't
show.
show you that it's like a YouTube, like.
Yeah, but that's what it was. Yeah,
Okay, I thought that was Quizlet.
It wasn't.
Okay.
It was not
That makes
Quizlet,
sense.
and it's definitely, you need to watch it. It's
Okay,
very
I will
good, okay? Yeah, it was not, sometimes, most of the time, YouTube always gives you that option to make it like a, but not always. So, yeah, it was not a Quizlet, okay. Okay, so we're still in Phylum Chordata, but we're going into class Agnantha, okay? And that's what the lampy eel is in, class Agnantha. And we've got this term, anadromous. What does that mean?
It's where they're like hatched in fresh water and then they migrate to salt water and then they go back to fresh water to reproduce.
Yes.
That's what trouts do, right?
Trout, salmon, the lampy eel, does this. Yes. So, okay. So what, who wants to tell me a little bit, somebody that watched that video, tell me a little bit about the lampy eel and the problem and some of the things that we're doing. Anybody remember why the lampy eel is a problem?
Like a problem to our ecosystem.
And Nancy, you won't know, because you might know a
I'm
little
trying to
bit, but
think
without
about
watching
it.
the video
Sometimes
was
you can
very,
figure it out.
gave you a lot of detail about it.
I don't know how, I don't remember.
You don't remember?
Because it's a parasite. The big.
Well,
Fish that
okay,
can
so,
Oh, it says it in the book.
yes, it gives you some information about it.
Okay.
Okay, so class Agnantha
It
is gonna
shows
have, what's their mouth like?
It's like a sucker, like it.
Yes, so it's got a round sucker-like jawless mouth with a raspy tongue and horny teeth. Okay, so it attaches to prey and scrapes its tongue up against the prey to extract blood, and it weakens. It's not actually exactly a parasite, but this is kind of how it goes.
Is it like a giant leech?
Well, a leech is just completely like a parasite is completely dependent on the organism that it leeches onto. This is more of a predator-prey relationship. But I mean, it's similar, but it's a little bit different. So it kind of weakens the prey, and then the prey usually dies. And so what happens is the lampy eel will attach to fish that we eat, like salmon and whitefish, and it will wipe out fisheries. And so does anybody remember where it's a huge problem? Ruby? The Great Lakes, okay, which there's a lot of colder water fish that we fish and eat from the Great Lakes. And does anybody remember this? Because I think this is kind of an important detail. It does say this in the book, and it's in the video, but it's just briefly mentioned. How did this problem come about? Like, why was the lampy eel not a problem 300 years
Were
ago?
they trying to cut down the amount of fish in the Great Lakes?
Man-made canals.
Man-made canals. Okay, so we made these man-made canals. The eels came into the Great Lakes from places ways that they wouldn't have been able to get into them because of man-made canals. And so that started the problem. Okay, so with this class Agnantha, with these lampy eels, their skeleton is made of cartilage. They're flexible. Because they're doing damage to the fishing industry, what's steps has the US government and the Canadian government, they're kind of working together? What kind of steps, what are they doing to help keep it under control and keep the ecosystem in balance? Yes?
They're poisoning the water with a chemical that like just kills them.
It just kills
The larva?
the larva. Yes, it just kills the larva. And then there's one other thing that they're doing besides that, which that kind of scares me, honestly, because I think they're saying the chemical just kills the larva, but you just have to think that it's got to affect other things. And so that, when they're doing that, because the lampy eel is anadromous, they're doing that in like freshwater streams where the larvae are living, okay? So does anybody remember what the other thing is that they're doing?
Pollution?
Pollution, okay, so that's something they don't talk about in the
They
video.
don't want to spread pollution.
But the pollution apparently, because the lampy eel doesn't do well with pollution, and so that actually has helped a little bit. Man-made pollution has actually helped, but this was something else that the governments were doing.
They're
was only on the video.
adult ones. That's
What are they doing? What are they doing to the males?
They use nets.
Anybody remember what they're doing to the males?
Are they sterilized?
Yes. So they're sterilizing the males. Okay, so that that doesn't mean that they're sterilizing all the males, but they end up sterilizing. They try to sterilize half of the males, and so that decreases a lot of the lampy reproduction. So that's kind of also helps. Okay. All right. So now, okay, let's go to this. Let's look at the On Your Own on 402 to 403. If you see a sealed tube full of bright red blood, did it come from a vein or an artery?
Artery.
Artery, 13.6.
Okay.
Blood is traveling back to the heart. Is it in a vein or an artery?
Vein.
Vein, okay. A viviparous mother eats plenty of food, but the developing offspring is not nourished properly. What structure is not performing its job? Placenta. Okay. Fish typically reproduce when the female lays her eggs and the male fertilizes them. What kind of fertilization is this, and what kind of development is this? External.
Oviparous.
Oviparous, good. All right. Okay, hold on, Eli. I'm looking back on Your Own on 1313. A student says lampreys are parasites. How should the student's incorrect statement be modified to make it correct? And the answer is adult lampreys. So I guess it would be considered a parasite. To me, it seems it's a little bit different than what I think of as a parasite, but it is, you're right. You're correct. Thank you for correcting me, Eli. You should have just told me I was wrong. Okay.
I mean, I didn't know.
Okay. All right, so now we're getting into class chondrichthyes, okay? And these are the fish with cartilage. So this is going to be your sharks, skates, and rays. This is where you haven't done the reading. And so I'm going to kind of go through some basics with you. I still want you to read it. 2 really good videos that you're going to watch next week, one on sharks and one on skates and rays. And again, to me, some of the information about sharks in this book is outdated. The video has some more up-to-date information. Okay, so does anybody know, as far as the kind of some of the differences that you might have even read in kids' books when you were growing up, what is different about a shark skeleton compared to a more traditional fish skeleton?
It is made entirely of cartilage.
Cartilage.
I don't want to be wrong
Yes,
though.
you're right. Okay, so nobody's supposed to have read this, so you're completely fine. Yes, so they are more flexible, they're made of cartilage, and has anybody heard that sharks have to continuously swim or they'll drown? Okay, you heard that, okay. It's actually not true.
That's probably how I don't know it.
Because they have to stay.
Yes, it's actually not true, except with the hammerhead shark, and you'll see this on the video, but otherwise it is actually not true. But they do not have something that other fish have, in this class, and it's called a swim bladder. Okay, and a swim bladder is kind of like a balloon. Do you know what it is, Eli?
Yes,
Okay.
it helps to keep them afloat if they're not swimming upwards or downwards.
Yes, so a swim bladder is kind of like a balloon inside, okay? And when the balloon, you think about like a float is filled with air and it floats to the top, okay? But if your float gets deflated, it's gonna start to sink. All right, the swim bladder in the fish is the same way, but sharks, skates and rays, anything in class chondrites does not have a swim bladder.
So they
Okay.
won't drown, they just sink if they stop swimming.
So when fish want to go up towards the top, they're going to absorb gas into their swim bladder, and that's gonna take them up, gonna make them more buoyant, and when they want to go down to the bottom, okay, then they're going to release gas and to kind of deflate their swim bladder so they can go down, but sharks don't have that, so sharks can hang out on the bottom, but they do not have to be constantly swimming. They can circulate water through their gills without constantly swimming. Okay. What about teeth?
Oh, like their teeth fall out all the time. It's like they're always growing new teeth.
Always growing new teeth. They have a constant supply, typically have 4 rows, and one comes out and another one from a back row is just gonna move forward. So they're constantly regenerating their teeth. They're not worried about their teeth. Okay, their gills are where they're gonna get rid of oxygen. Take in oxygen and get rid of their carbon dioxide. They don't have to swim continuously to move water through their gills because they can pump water through the gills. When they're swimming, that just naturally happens. They will rest on the bottom. There's some sharks that can even, and you'll see this in the videos, that can kind of even camouflage themselves on the bottom. What about their vision, sense of smell? Does anybody?
They can't see well.
Okay, well, the book is gonna tell you that they can't see well, and that is definitely not their best sense, but they do have some night vision, some decent night vision, and so they actually do a little bit better hunting prey at night. But you'll kind of see in the video that the sight is a little bit better than what they say in the book. What about smell?
They have a very keen sense of smell.
They do have a good sense.
How do
of
they smell in water?
But you can't smell that much in water. They have a good sense of smell, but
Like,
still
yeah.
water is not.
Okay,
So,
I was like,
yes.
it does not.
Yes,
make sense.
yes, it's not, but they do have a good sense of smell. Okay. Then, sharks and bony fish, which we will get into, have something that's called a lateral line. And if you can turn to page 406. And this is a canal that runs the length of the shark's body, and it's full of nerve receptors. And so it can detect small vibrations, okay? And so when there's a small vibration, what do you think that would indicate?
Something is moving in the water.
Something is moving in the water. So that helps them know, that would help them to detect prey. But even better than that,
You know how like humpback whales, what is it called? How they communicate with each other?
the echolation.
Yeah. Can they? Does that vibrate the water? Would sharks be able to realize that there's?
I would think it would cause a vibration.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I don't know.
that would
I
make
was just
sense.
thinking.
Yeah, that would make sense that it would cause a vibration. Yes. Okay, so but the shark's best sense is called their electrical field sensor. And it's extremely sensitive, and basically they can sense impulses from muscles, electrical impulses from muscles of prey. Okay? And so a shark in a pitch black ocean could be swimming over a bunch of flounders beneath, and it will pick up their electrical signals, and it will just dive right down and get the flounder. So that really is so the eyesight is better than the book says. They can see at night. They have a good sense of smell, but you don't smell that much in the ocean. They have a lateral line to pick up vibrations, but their superpower is this electrical field sensor.
I wonder if humans, like, in the future are gonna figure out how to, like, cultivate that to work in humans. Like, have, like, a device that does it. I don't know, like, follow with the shark.
Yes.
And I'm like, I don't know, just thinking.
Well, that is a good thought, Nancy. That is a good thought. Okay. All right, so shark, the whale shark is going to be the largest shark. It is a filter feeder, all right? So it's not going around hunting for prey. So not all sharks are going around hunting for prey using their electrical field sensor. They're just constantly swimming around and filtering out their food. Okay, shark reproduction. The fertilization is going to be internal, and then they're oviparous. Okay, the fertilized egg attaches to a stationary spot underwater and hatches. Okay. Sharks have a symbiotic relationship. This will remind you of some of the ones we talked about in Module 10. Does anybody know about a certain fish that attaches to the shark that's beneficial to the shark?
No,
The
we're
shark
talking
doesn't
about
eat it.
I don't remember the name.
Remora. You read shark books when you were a little boy, didn't you?
I watched a lot of shark
You did?
documentaries.
Okay.
I
So,
did not.
what do you remember anything about the remora?
I mean,
Eli?
I saw it a little bit in here, but I do remember reading about it as a little kid. It was, they just hang out underneath one of the shark's fins,
Okay.
and they'll get whatever food the shark drops, and will clean off parasites off the shark.
So the way that they're beneficial to the shark is that they clean off parasites off their scales, but they will eat leftover food particles. Good. Okay. So also in the shark family in chondrites are rays and skates.
Skates are weird looking.
Yeah, they are weird.
Oh.
I
haven't
think
seen
they're
what
all
they
weird.
look
Are
like.
they big?
No, the
Okay.
skates are smaller.
Oh.
And you'll see the videos
In
are
that
really
photo,
good.
it looks like it's giant. And you're just
Oh,
like,
It's so
the
stupid.
skate ones?
yes. That might just.
That does look really big in that video. Yeah, it's not. The skates are
Okay.
usually
You
small.
looks really
My
silly.
cousin got, we call it stabbed because they don't really sting. They
Right,
just
right.
Stab you, so
Uh-huh.
she got like a.
Some of
like a
them do
stab.
have some things, will have like a venomous, but not all.
Yeah, hers got infected.
Oh, it did?
Yeah, she
I
went to the
got
hospital.
stung by a stingray.
You did?
My brother did.
Your brother,
It
was he
went all
okay?
the way through his stomach. He had to go to the ER.
Ooh.
Yeah, my cousin was so happy because she was younger.
Uh-huh.
And you know when you're younger, you always wanted scars.
And I did not, but.
Yes! I wanted to break a bone so bad for some
Well,
reason.
Well, I just always fell when I was younger, so like I have a bunch of scars and she was always so jealous of me, and then she was like, now I'm gonna have a circle scar, because she had it on her.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Wow.
So cool.
Okay, so the video about the rays and skates is very good. They're also known as batoids because they actually look like bats as they travel through the water. They a lot of times are hanging out on the bottom. They're of the bottom of the ocean surface, so a lot of them can camouflage themselves. They have wing-like pectoral fins that extend down their whole body. The rays have the stingers, the skates do not. Their eyes are on the top of their head. They have a mouth on the bottom that's on the ocean bottom, and so they're eating things like mollusks and little crustaceans and things that are on the bottom, and they have like teeth that can actually crunch through the shells, but they do not breathe through their mouth. Why do you think they don't breathe through their mouth? Their mouth was on the bottom and it wasn't on the
Breathing sand.
They would pick up a bunch of sand, and so I think you probably remember this term from the last module. They have the same thing that insects have, the spherical, remember the little opening where the air can come through? So they take in air through their spherical. They're taking it in, and it's going to their gills. They're taking in the water through the spherical, and it's going through the gills. So where the insect was taking air through the spherical, the skates and rays are taking in water through the spherical that's passing through the gills. The gills are extracting the oxygen and sending out the carbon dioxide back out through that spherical. Okay, so the skates don't have a stinger. The manta ray. Eli, did you ever read about manta rays?
Yes, these things don't have stingers either, but they will bite your fingers off very easily.
Okay, so what helps manta rays? They don't have the stinger, but what helps them scare off predators is they're just very, very large. And so that is scary. And they actually are not swimming on the bottom. The manta rays are filter feeders, so they're gonna be like your whale sharks. They're swimming and constantly filtering through, but they're a type of ray that's not hanging out on the bottom.
I would love to swim with a whale shark. I don't know if that might just be me.
Well, you'll probably like the videos.
Okay. My sister hates underwater stuff.
I
want to go scuba diving.
I love anything water related, so like I love the beach.
Okay, so rays are, most rays are ovoviviparous, okay? So that means what?
They fertilize eggs and then hatch them on the inside.
Good. And most skates are oviparous, okay? All right. Okay, so now we're going to go ahead and look, you can go ahead and flip to page 409. And we're gonna look at class Osteichthes, which is the bony fish. And this was, you all, I told them, Nancy, that did you watch that live video of the fish dissection? Okay, that should have been bumped back a few days.
I was like,
We did that dissection last year on this day, and that's what happened. I should have bumped it back until after we talked about it. It was a terrible lab. The fish were impossible to cut through.
because of the scales.
Yeah, it was just,
The scales just whatever. I think Ellery.
it did not go well. You couldn't see anything, so I just decided we weren't gonna do that. We're gonna do the video. Okay, so this is going to be, our bony fish, and they have, you can see in the diagram on page 409, an operculum. You see that kind of like half moon shape below their eye? And probably in the dissection, she pointed out the operculum. Does everybody see that? Okay, so you have one on either side, and that is where the fish takes the water in through the mouth. The water goes to the gills, okay? It extracts the oxygen as it passes through the gills, and then and releases the carbon dioxide into the water, and then that water goes back out the operculum, is what that is. Okay, also you see that it has the lateral line on that diagram. That's like the shark. It is like a canal of nerves that picks up vibrations. And these fish do have bones, but they also have a good bit of cartilage in them. And then they have fins that perform different functions, and I actually forgot to talk about the fins in the sharks. but you will see in here, you've got this anterior dorsal fin and the posterior dorsal fin. And, what do you notice about those? And you've, I'm sure, noticed this if you've gone fishing and had to take the fish off the hook.
Ugh. Doesn't it like stick out?
Sometimes it hurts.
The fish?
You can, so in those fins, the dorsal fin and the posterior fin, a lot of times it has like spiky.
Yeah, I was thinking something else.
Yes, okay.
Are those
Okay.
you've cut me
Yes, you can cut your hand on those, okay? And so those fins can also help, they have spines in them and they can help protect the fish from predators, okay? All right, you're going to see the pelvic fin down at the bottom. That can help aid in reproduction. The caudal fin and the sharks is the same way. It has a caudal fin. That's the fin that's going to help with swimming. Fish are going to be covered with overlapping scales, okay, and behind the scales there are mucus glands that secrete mucus. Okay, this is why the fish feel slimy, okay. Why do you think the mucus is important? Anybody have any thoughts about that? Why fish would need to have kind of mucus?
They're hard to grab. I was just.
That does make them hard to grab. It does make
like the shield.
Yeah, it's because it protects them from the water. Because they're in the water all the time. It also protects them from that's a good answer. Yes, it makes them go faster, protects them from water drag. It protects them from parasites, okay, all that.
I swim, so that makes a lot
That
of
makes sense.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay, so fish are this group, make sure I'm saying this right. Osteichthyes. This is gonna be our first group that has a tongue with taste buds on the tongue. So that digestive system is gonna start out with a tongue, so it's gonna go to the mouth. Then you've got the pharynx, that pharynx is the organ that has muscle that kind of brings the food back. Then it goes through the esophagus, into the stomach, into the intestine, and out through the anus. So this digestive system is getting closer and closer to our digestive system. And then there are two things that you need to know about that actually send digestive enzymes into the intestine, and one is the pyloric ceca, and it is very similar to our pancreas in that it helps with carbohydrate breakdown. And then the liver secretes something called bile into the intestine, which helps break down fats and helps clean the blood. And so that their digestive system is getting much closer to our digestive system, okay? We talked about the air bladder, and they also have, so let's look on page 410. And let's go to the esophagus. Can everybody find that? The pink tube. Everybody see that? Where the esophagus is on 410? Okay. So then it keeps going, and then the kind of the balloon down there is the stomach. And off of that stomach is the intestine. But the liver, the big red thing, is sending bile into the intestine through the gallbladder, okay? And the gallbladder is gonna concentrate the bile, And then the pyloric ceca, does everybody see that? It almost looks like little hairy extensions coming off. It's going to send digestive enzymes also into the intestine. All right, and then the air bladder, that yellow balloon, that's like the balloon that I talked about that lets controls the buoyancy of the fish. And fish are ectothermic, which means they don't have a way to regulate their body temperature. And so, how do you think the swim bladder comes in handy when you're ectothermic?
You can add more cold air in some warm.
That's a good guess, but that was not, I never thought about that, but I like that answer.
The bigger the warmer.
So you think about temperature-wise, when it's gonna be cooler down, and it's gonna be warmer up. So some of it's gonna be the fish traveling. Fish are gonna travel to where a comfortable temperature is. So they may travel distance-wise, but they also may travel higher or lower in the water, depending on the water temperature. Okay. All right, so at the end, so we looked at this, the circulatory system. With the fish circulatory system, you do not need to know, this is much more detail in here than what I want you to know. You will be able to tell in Quizlet what I expect you to know. I want you to know that they have a 2-chambered heart, okay, and so they have an atria and a ventricle, okay. The atria receives the blood, the ventricle pumps the blood out, okay. The artery takes out the oxygenated blood, the ventricle pumps the blood into the artery, and the vein is going to bring back the blood that has already, that's been deoxygenated after it travels through those capillary beds. That is really, I am not expecting you to learn this diagram or learn, I want you to understand the difference between the atria and the ventricle and the vein and the artery and the capillaries. Does that make sense? So really what I have from that in Quizlet is what I want you to know. All right. Okay, then on page 414 and 415, when you read through these, it's going to kind of just tell you some interesting facts about some different members of this class. And probably things you've heard of like betta fish, puffer fish, butterfly fish, and carp. Okay, does anybody know anything about carp or those big orange fish? Has anybody heard anything about those? Carp, you know what those are?
I've caught one.
You caught one?
Yes. Yeah, they grow on my uncle's lake. They just eat anything.
They can eat anything, they're trash fish. So they clean up after algal blooms. So when we had an algal bloom on my lake, we did several things to the lake, on my pond in my backyard. It's kind of a small lake. But we had to put carp in the lake because they'll eat up the algal blooms. So they help keep algal blooms under control, okay? In this section, this is interesting reading. The only ones that are going to be on the test is you have to know a little bit about the salmon and you have to know a little bit about the carp. You'll see those in the Quizlet. The other ones I would read through because it's interesting hearing about the betta fish and how you can't put another male in with betta fish because it will
Yeah,
fight
we
it.
had, my parents used to have betta fish, and they started off with like a mom and a dad, and then they didn't know that they like ate each other, so after they had babies, they like slowly every day they'd be like, wait, is there one missing? And then there would be another one missing, and then another one missing, and then finally just be one fish.
Oh, yeah, so the just kind of interesting reading. So that's where we are. I should have waited to have you watch the fish dissection video and, until after you covered that. So if you haven't watched that, you can just, watch it at the end of the chapter. Next week, we're just gonna talk about amphibians. We're not gonna talk, I'm so sorry that this was so long today. I know that this is like not the favorite day of watching. I don't like it when it's like this, but we needed to get through that material. So next week, we'll just cover amphibians for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then we'll do our dissection. And I think, next Friday, or maybe one day, maybe even this Friday, there's like a lab catch-up built-in, there's some lab catch-up built-in days. There's definitely some like days to get caught up on things. So it would be really good with this extra week and extra time on this module, for everybody to get their lab notebook caught up.
Okay, do you have class next week?
Next week we have class. Next week is frog dissection,
Sorry,
and then
I'm
we don't have it the next week. We don't have it the next week, okay? But